Hi.
Hi, Elva.
Hi. How are you?
Amazing. How are
I
you
am
doing?
so yeah, I'm really good. Well, I'm happy it's Friday, right?
Yes, we're quite excited about that, and it's nice that you scheduled this as our last activity before we have a little beverage and enjoy the sun.
Oh, I should have sent you girls wine or something or like beer for happy hour.
Oh, we should have done that. We invited you to this conversation. What were we
Yeah.
thinking?
Okay, I got a hot coffee. I'm pretty happy.
I'll do a little introduction for
Yeah.
you. Paula's who's been communicating with you. She's our brand manager and manager of content. Alex Sinclair is our marketing coordinator at Spark, and I myself, Jessica, I'm on the sales side, sales director. And first off, thank you again for taking the time.
Oh,
It's
I'm honored. It sounds like a great, fun initiative. Like I mean, I was super surprised, but I think it's great. So tell me a little bit more about what you guys are doing.
Yes. So we're assembling this series, which is really going to spotlight influential people in the industry on an ongoing basis. But this one, we wanted, actually, it's our first, and we're kicking it off because of International Women's Day next week. We thought it
Yeah.
was a great idea to highlight some of the Canadian women in real estate and real estate development. And the kind of where this came about is, we've been in this industry for a while now on the technology side, and we've had this privilege of working with so many amazing people and women. And we just thought, why don't we share some of their stories? There's a lot to learn from and to be inspired from. And we kind of carefully handpicked a few across Canada. And you're one of those people that we consider probably have some great experiences to share and to learn from. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for asking me. It's really nice. Yeah. I think it's a great initiative. I'm excited for you guys for sure.
Okay, I'll kick it off. I'm just going to make it very conversational. We all did a little bit of research about your very accomplished career
Yeah,
working.
what'd you find?
Well, a quick LinkedIn search told me that you have probably about 20 years of experience in new development.
Mhm.
You've worked with a number of names that are quite prominent in my opinion.
Mhm.
And you've been with Anthem now for about 7 or 8 years,
Yeah.
leading them. What's your current role right now?
So I'm executive vice president of sales and marketing. So what falls under that banner is sales and marketing and for home building, which is a smaller division that we've got down in California, and one that will probably soon launch in Calgary and Edmonton. And then I have multifamily and rental. So sales in that aspects and lease up, and then marketing across 4 cities and land and home building, multifamily, and then there's corporate, and then there's communications and customer service in multifamily. So Anthem, that sounds like a big mouthful. It's not really. So it's a fully integrated company. And so the platform of management basically carries over across all 4 cities and all 5 asset classes. And so we've got our own respective teams, local teams that are boots on the ground that are doing the work, but they're integrated by in any other sort of outside world, we would call that a department, and internally we refer to that as a house team. And so marketing is its own department, sales is its own department, but it's integrated across our cities and asset classes.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the first time I've heard it explained. I've always admired. I always look at Anthem and I see all the work you do and all the people that work with your team, and I think, wow, I don't know how they do it, but thank you for explaining that a little bit.
yeah, it's dynamic, but it's really fun. Like, when from the outside looking in, you probably see a lot of people and a lot of big stats and numbers, but I think our approach is fairly informal, as you can tell. No, I'll dress like this on a Wednesday versus a Friday, and we're informal and technical to a degree, but everyone's sort of an expert in their own discipline, and it's very collaborative and pretty diverse now, I would say. So it's a good sort of dynamic crew of people.
You seem to have nailed a culture that is, I don't want to call it casual because it's not. It's very like representative of the people that builds the company. Like you can still express yourself, but you've honed, building communities. Like you've perfected it as a company. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a minute, right? Like, so Anthem's been in business for about 30 years, but when we talk about our people, or when I take a look outside, every company has its own brand, right? So we've got some marketing and brand people in here, and you guys are seem like a very strong internal group as well, Spark, right? So I would say the identity of a lot of different organizations or development companies in our city, they all have their own brand persona. And so sometimes you'll see people from one company and they almost like look and sound the same. It's like an owner and their dog, right? And what I appreciate about our company is, everyone is really encouraged to be their most authentic selves. And you can still, so I kind of call us like a motley crew. Like, it's just a hub of just diverse, different people. They all talk and walk and, dress all very differently. We're not all wearing the same pants and the dress shoes, but there's a look, and there's a tone, and there's a persona that's unique, and one I'm pretty proud of, because it's so diverse and everyone's so different. So
Yeah, that must be rewarding being part of that type of culture. We echo some of the values that you have at Anthem as well. Obviously, being on the technology side, where we have a little bit more of a progressive outlook. We want to move the industry forward, so we kind of reflect that with who we are and our brand. And it's always been about being very clean, and really the software is supposed to do that or reflect that way as well. And it does. So we're proud of that.
mm-hmm.
I would love to know, I mean, you're at this point now, where did it start? Like, how did you get here?
I fell into it was totally by accident. So I finished school. I had a big fat, like, I had a $30,000 student loan I needed to pay off. I graduated in social sciences, Bachelor of Psych and Psychology, Bachelor of Science and Psych, and I used to work with juvies and group home kids and children, and really more the ministry services side. And when I graduated, it was a new election, government switched hands, and so my departments in social sciences basically went under. And I had a friend that worked for a developer, and she offered me a temp role. And so that's how I quite literally fell into it by accident. I covered the phones. I was the shittiest receptionist. I was terrible. I sent like faxes upside down. I couldn't work a switchboard phone. I was like, it was so fucking confusing. And so at that time, the sales and marketing VP, gave me a couple $100, asked me if I spoke another language. I said, not really, but I'm Korean. And he goes, perfect. And plot me out in a Britco trailer at a site out in Burnaby. And, that's kind of how it all started in sales. And so I started as a sales coordinator or assistant and worked my way up in the sales arena. And that at that time was like a job. It was a job. I was young, I was paying my bills. I wanted to pay down my student loan. And then, something sort of shifted 10 years later. But that's so I started out as a terrible, shitty receptionist, trying to pay off my credit card bills.
It's funny you bring up the trailer. I was in new development in my past career as well, and that's how I started. Thrown into the presentation center, and go for it. See how you do. But
yeah, it is a sink or swim kind of environment. Like, it's either going to work for you or it's not. But it was such a dynamic time. And I was lucky, right? I caught a great swing in the market, and I learned how to sell every different product type there was, whether it was a wood frame condo to a high-rise concrete tower, different areas of Burnaby and Coquitlam. And so that just kind of became the launch pad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And having that sales experience certainly helped when you start transitioning into like the marketing side and the operations. And I remember starting in it and thinking, I don't know if this is for me, but I'm so glad that I did it because of that foundation. It just propels you, right?
Totally.
So I'm sure there's so many of these experiences you can think of, or moments, the defining moment that shaped your career and who you are today. But maybe there's one that kind of took a little bit more courage, or a little bit more of a caused a bit more of a shift in your world. Is there something like that that you could share?
It's not one, it's certainly not one I would have planned. So, you know, when you're in it, and I don't know if most people, I'm sure most people start out like this. Like, I had no plan. So if somebody had told me 19, 20 years ago that this is the job that I would have now, I would say, most likely I'd probably say there's no fucking way, and I'm no thank you. But you know, when you think back, or when I think back at one of those career defining moments, in the moment, I didn't know that it was a career defining moment. In that moment, you know, 10 years ago, I was just doing my job and I was working really hard at it. And in hindsight, when you look back and you see that moment in time, in 2009, I think it was, the market had sort of crashed, and it was really challenging time to push any sort of real estate, especially new home real estate. You know, the concrete market was basically dormant, you know, and everything was just a slog to get across the finish line. And so everything that I'd pre-sold back in 2006 was closing. And, you know, the bank had pulled our blanket, and, you know, people weren't getting finance for the homes that they thought that they were going to. There was no market to do really any sort of assignments. And so that middle pocket, that mid-range investor who had bought 1, 2, 3 pre-sales to flip, couldn't really flip any of their homes. And so it was a really challenging, compromised time. And so I got called back to one of the development companies that I spent quite a few years with. Went back and tried to help with the closing. So it was me, a litigator from a great law firm, and an incredible conveyancing team. And you have no idea what you're actually doing, like the significance of it, until you've crossed the finish line. And then you look back a year later going, wow, like, you know, it was me and a really small team of people and some support from the office. And it was like, you know, it was just really hand-to-hand combat on working with these people and helping them get across the finish line and find their financing and sourcing different solutions for them, which is totally outside of the traditional pre-sale sales wheelhouse. So being a part of those closings, you know, finishing up in 2010, you know, it was one of those pivotal moments that I'll look back on going, I'm glad I took that opportunity, because it was so outside of what I knew how to do. And so just by saying, sure, I'll try it, why not, you know, let's give it a go, and being open and receptive to different opportunities has kind of, it's kind of landed me here.
That's, I mean, that was a very interesting time.
Yeah.
I was only entering the market at that time,
Yeah.
and learning about it still, you know, in school. I couldn't imagine, and to have that type of experience, and, you know, thinking at the time like, hey, this is hard, but it just strengthening you for anything, right?
Yeah, and you kind of pop your head up after 13 months and you close out 3 different buildings in a really challenging time, and you go, I guess that was pretty good. But in hindsight, you know, I've since had subsequent conversations with the president of that organization, and he's like, you know, that was, you know, that was a critical point in time for us as a company, and like, you're kind of at the helm working together to figure it out. And so, yeah, at the moment, if somebody had told me how daunting the task was, I might have, you know, kind of shit my pants and been like, no thanks. But I'm glad that we kind of went through it together and made it out the other side. And now I got a story, and you know, it's all great.
Totally. Maybe this is a good segue to the leadership question. You know, one kind of leadership lesson that maybe you've come across in your career that makes sense that to pass along to generations below.
You know, the advice and counsel that I would give in terms of leadership to you know, an up and coming generation, or just to you guys, is know who your champions are, right? No one can do anything alone. And so by knowing who your champions are and knowing, really leaning on them, I find that there was a moment in time, or I'm sure it's still the case, but everyone's kind of looking for that mentor or a mentor to kind of take people under their wing. And, by doing that, you really got to lean in. It's not just about showing up and presenting well, but it's being humble and human and vulnerable and being like, I had, and really be vulnerable about the challenges that you guys are facing so that, people can really provide honest, transparent guidance, right? So knowing who your champions are, being vulnerable enough to lean in on them, and then, when you've made it a step or two ahead, pay it forward. And then that chain becomes, it's a self-sustaining model of support. And whether you're a woman or a man or young or old, it really shouldn't matter. It's just having a positive, supportive network. The one thing I would say that's worked out really well for me now that I've had a second to kind of think about it is don't question your value. Because, never, ever question your value. Know what market is for the roles that you're in, but the worst anyone's ever going to tell you for what you want is no. And if you can contextualize that and rationalize that feedback, you're going to end up much further ahead than if you just compared yourself to whatever the benchmark was. So don't question your value.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It is really hard as you're on your come up and you're just figuring things out still and where you fit into your career or your value. I mean, I've done it. I'm sure you have done it. But it's really, really powerful to get to that point where you're like, no, do not question your value.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
Love it. Thank you. Throughout your career, I mean, what's impressive about everyone that we've actually spoken with is they've stuck with it, right? This isn't just like a few years. Obviously, they wouldn't be where they are. They wouldn't be as influential as they are. But I love to kind of dive into that daily motivation. Like, what really drives you to stay in this industry?
It's never the same thing. When people read market reports, you see these cycles and you see stats and you see numbers, but in the context of housing and the business that we're in and the people you surround yourself with, culturally and corporately and personally and professionally, like I've had a really good ride. I've been incredibly lucky. I've worked for some great organizations, but I've also worked in a time in the market and for organizations that really supported diversity and growth. And so when you're a part of that much growth, on a bad day, you're tied to the rocket ship on the outside, and on a good day, you're inside the rocket ship and you're wearing a seatbelt, right? And it's constantly exciting, but the people that I've had exposure to work with and my own respective teams, that's the juice. The market is cyclical, and I'm excited about where the market's headed, especially coming out of COVID. But I love the widget because building housing it really gives you purpose. But the people you get to work with, that's the exchange of that kind of creative energy that keeps anyone going, right? And so that's the stuff that is the residual that makes everything worth it.
Love that. Very true. A lot of parallels there in our life and in yours, I think.
What do you guys look for? Like if you like, what do you look for? Like when you're in the business that you're in, what gives you guys energy?
For me, it's definitely the people as well.
Yeah.
I didn't come from a tech background. I had like no intention of ever entering this industry. I kind of fell into it as well, but the team at Spark is so great that it really does keep you going.
Yeah, I think too, for me, I'm just out of school and I really wanted to be in an environment where I knew that a team was committed to teaching me and to watching me grow, which is really very accessible in a startup environment, but I definitely wanted to see the long-term growth of what I could learn.
Awesome.
For me, it's a bit, there's a couple layers. I'll try to keep it short, but I mean, I came from the real estate industry, like 10 years of that, you really develop a love for it. But I kind of wanted to get into the tech side because I loved that we were making a change, like a positive change, an impact. And what I didn't really realize at the time, now I realize, is how, every person that I work with is not only incredible, but they also have such a contribution to the growth of the company, which changes the industry, like the prop tech industry. And that's what kind of keeps driving me forward. It's like the people, but then watching the impact that we all have in our own little way. It's cool.
Awesome. So good.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, Elva.
Yeah, no, it's a two-way dialogue. I'm so curious.
My last question is kind of twofold. You can answer one or the other, and it's really just you kind of touched on like what's exciting in the future of the real estate development industry, or maybe what are you excited about with Anthem or in your personal world that's coming up in the next year?
Okay, so that's a lot. Okay, so with respect to real estate and the future, I think what I'm most excited about is coming out of COVID, is that the fundamentals of our market are so much stronger today than they were before COVID happened. When you look at our numbers and you look at how we've managed as a society through this, as a Canadian society through this, I'm incredibly proud of how we've managed to work together to sort of come out of this. And so I think that coming out of it over the next year, once everyone gets their vaccine and it's a safer place to be more open and together and closer without masks and gloves and so much hand sanitizer everywhere, I think that immigration, I think, will flow in great numbers. I think that we'll see. What I'm hopeful for is that we'll see social responsibility meet strong leadership, and where core issues that are impacting our city will become less political and more about doing the right thing. So it'd be nice to see organizations work more with each other, municipalities work with each other, the politics and the government and our people in our city, and figure out what's needed to live better lives, and how are we going to work together as a collective to get there. So that's kind of more of a in the future, whether the groundwork happens now and works its way past the year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever that is. That's what makes me optimistic and excited about our future here locally. Personally, I cannot wait to get on a fucking plane to go travel. I'm very grateful. We live in a beautiful city where we have access to all the things, and our backdrop, I drive in and my backdrop is so beautiful. Like I'm staring at the water and the mountains right now through a couple of towers downtown, and I'm very grateful. But the day that I can, hop on a plane and go taste something exotic and be somewhere random and walk around with I can't wait to travel. And then, that kind of covers real estate, that covers personal. And what I'm excited about for Anthem is just, managing the growth and working with the people and the teams and growing the company in a sustainable way, so that it continues to move and is sustainable with or without any of, we're working towards 1,000-year company, right? So the idea is that the impression that we're able to leave today will have a positive impact on the people that are on the come up later. So it's continuing to keep the shit tight, but enjoy the process and the experience along the way.
Wow, is that like the official mission vision statement?
No, but I might ask you the recording, because if it was good, I might use it.
It was like this. It was excellent. I was about to interject at one point and ask, do you do these speaking engagements more often? Because UDI or ULI would love your vision of Vancouver and BC and the whole landscape.
I'm happy to spend my afternoon with you guys, but that's about it for me.
Thank you so very much. This was actually such a positive end to our week.
Oh, thank you so much for the invite, guys. It's an honor, really. Thank you.